Since the last time we spoke with you, there have been a lot of changes afoot with the Washington Capitals, with the roster. There have been some trades made. I wanted to kind of go behind the scenes in the process of letting Hathaway and Orlov know that they were being dealt to the Bruins. Does Mac meet with them first to break that news? Are you in the room as it happens, or do you get to say your goodbyes later in your office on an individual basis with the players? And how did the players in the locker room respond to the news of the trades?
It's kind of a fluid situation. I think with every trade, it's different. It moves. It depends on the day and what's going on inside of the day, the timing. Sometimes it could be on a day off and you call the player and you meet with them and talk with them. It could be happening in the morning where, you might just be at a pregame skate. This one happened relatively close to the game. And, we knew that I knew that these players from MAC were going to be moved. And when Brian called me, I ended up calling the players because they were on their way to the game and on their way to the rink. So just communication that they were not going to play that night. And, we would pass the information along to them when it came out. And so eventually there was phone calls made to let them know, where they were going. And, it's just different every time because it depends on the day. It depends on what's going on in your day. We had a game to play. And so, everybody knew at that point that they were going to be moved. And so even the players in the room.
Coach, on the flip side of that, you acquire a player. I know that you guys got picks, and that was a big part of the deal to try and get younger in the future and acquire those picks. But you got a guy in Craig Smith. Tell us about him. And I saw the locker room scene after the win, and you commended him. I mean, he didn't have much time to learn your systems.
Yeah, I've worked with Craig before. It came from Boston, and sometimes that's you talk about getting traded one way, him coming back the other way is the same thing.
Right.
He'd been there for a couple of years in Boston, and it's just tough when you get traded and moved. So he comes in and jumps into gets in the night before at 8:30 and jumps into our early afternoon game. And so he was a little bit familiar with what we were doing and the system that we were playing, and so we got him going. Good for him, I think, too. I don't think his season had gotten off in Boston the way he wanted to, and so a change of scenery for him to join our club. But like I said, you're talking about the trade one way, the trade the other way, too. Like, he gets notified, he's on a flight, he's in our city by 8:30 the night before a 1 o'clock game, and coming into a locker room and meeting everybody. I knew Craig, but there's a lot of players that he didn't know. It can be a little bit overwhelming, and just to walk into your uniform and into a game, that can be a little bit of a daunting task as well.
How involved are you in these moves? I mean, I know you talk to McClellan all the time. Like, are you kind of familiar with what probably or might happen, or is it kind of a shock to you?
I'm familiar. Brian and I communicate on a daily basis, and Brian, he's the general manager of the team. He's the one who makes the trades, executes the trades, but I believe that there's always communication as to what's going on. I feel like an organization has to function that way, and so we talk and communicate daily.
So do you ever jokingly, behind closed doors with Mac, give him the old, come on, man, I still need to win games here down the stretch, and you're dealing my pieces away. You're kind of killing me here, Mac.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think everybody understands, the trade deadline, and that things can happen all the time. And so, but at the end of the day, Brian McClellan is trying to do his job, and he's the general manager of the team. And then you're right, it does come down. My focus remains as the head coach. And so, we go into that game against New York, and our objective was to win a hockey game, period, end of story. And, we ended up drawing into Buffalo 17 hours later for another afternoon tilt, and the objective didn't change for me and our group and what it is that we're trying to do. And so obviously disappointing because we didn't do the right things or play well enough to win that game. But the focus for me and for the the guys down on the bench and in the room is to make sure that we're winning games. So it's, it's just, this is what happens at the trade deadline every year. And, you've just got to be able to keep moving with what goes on inside the league.
Talking to the head coach of the Washington Capitals, Peter Laviolette, when you look back at December, you guys seem to be winning every game. You had a fantastic record, and I think a big part of it was John Carlson, who hasn't played since December. What's it been like without Carly? It's interesting because we were talking about this during the break. He's a guy who, the last couple seasons, even though he puts up great numbers, gets a lot of social media criticism. But I was watching post-game the other night, and Alan May talking about the importance of him in the lineup. You guys have missed him terribly.
Yeah, I mean, the way that John plays the game, his offensive numbers are good. His defensive numbers, he draws in with heavy minutes against top players every single night. And with, John in position where he's on our club, it puts everybody in a good spot, I think, on our back end. The minute you remove a 25-minute player from the lineup, you're now moving pieces around and asking players to do John Carlson's job, and it becomes a little bit more challenging. John Carlson is a top defenseman on our team and in the league, and when a guy like that comes out of the lineup, there's no way that you don't miss him. And so you're right. Having him in the lineup is where we would like him. That's not available right now, which is unfortunate because, like you said, the team was playing well and he was playing well. And it just puts everything in the right place when he's in the lineup.
Coach, you touched on the quick turnaround between the Rangers and the Sabres game. We saw the tension boil over for Darcy Kemper with a meltdown in Buffalo. He broke his stick against the goalpost after giving up his fifth goal. We heard reports from Capitals Radio. He also threw his helmet down the runway. How long is the cooling off period for him after an outburst like that? Is he fine once the game is over and guys are getting dressed in the locker room? And I'm guessing there are a lot of amateur goalies at home that couldn't believe he's just snapping his twig. I don't know how much those sticks go for these days, but I know they're not cheap.
Yeah, that's I think that's just frustration boiling over. Kemps has got a really, for the most part, he's got an even keel about him. And with regard to that game and that particular day, we hung him out to dry. And so we turned the puck over way too much. It led to too many odd man rushes, and we did not defend the way that we needed to defend. And so when we made the move to put Charlie in there, it was not a reflection of the goaltending performance. That was to just try and make something different happen inside the game, pause the game for a second. But for the most part, Kemps he's an unbelievable competitor, and he wants to win. And he let his frustration out in that moment. And but I don't think that that's a reflection of who he is as a person.